Joining our Douglas County Commissioners today here at the 19th Street facility, we have Mark Straub, Dan Sutton, Kyle Steinberg. Thanks once again for joining us, guys.
Good morning.
I wanted to follow up where we left off last time, and that is with the resolution that you had put forward to make the union negotiating process more transparent. You had a public hearing on this last week.
Correct.
It was covered by NCW Life News, and sounds as if you're going to be putting off a final decision on this. Can you give us maybe an update from?
Sure, I can give you a little information
Dan?
on that. We had a lot of conversation. It was good conversation. We asked for specifics as to why it shouldn't be public. If they had some specific cases or incidents that would lend to keeping those in a private negotiation setting. And we're still trying to digest the information that we had. We're also waiting for a case that's in appeals court from Lincoln County to find out where it lies. Because if it turns out that they state that it is, for lack of better terms, illegal to do so, then carrying on a resolution doesn't make a lot of sense in this case. However, if in fact they uphold it, then we have to continue that discussion and see where we're going to go with that.
Your employee groups did not appear to be very receptive to this idea at the public hearing last week. How do you respond to those comments, Kyle?
I think there was a lot of misinformation out there about what it was really about. For me, part of the reason I want, to have this issue surrounding transparency is for the employees. I want them to understand and get all of the information in its appropriate context that we're trying to deliver, because I think we're all very much here for the great employees that we have here in Douglas County, and keeping them here. And in doing that, we have to offer fair compensation packages. And so, for me, one of the biggest things that I see moving forward is, just continuing to go through this collective bargaining process and make sure that it happens in the allotted and given time frame. There has to be a breakdown in the process. This last year, we had one of our contracts run over by quite a bit through the negotiating process, and there was no unfair labor practices or anything else like that found on behalf of the county. And so we were, in all essence, operating in good faith and negotiating in good faith. And if you are going through the process that they currently have, and they said, well, our process isn't broken, well, we operated in good faith. There was no unfair labor practices. We had offered contracts that were more than contracts did previously accepted, but for some reason or another we couldn't get to terms, and it went over by quite a bit, and it was a lot of extra expense that was had to be spared by the county to bring in labor attorneys and so forth and so on. So for me, a lot of it's getting the transparency also to our working group, to our employees that are out there that are represented by unions. This is what the county's offering you. You feel free to sit in, not participate, but sit in and see for yourselves, what we're offering. Because to me, if you are negotiating in good faith and you are a willing participant in the collective bargaining process, which you've said time and time again we are, there's no reason we wouldn't want to be, but you can't get a contract put together. The process is broken, and even though a lot of the union leadership says it's not, the evidence speaks to the contrary.
Mark?
For me, Steve, I look at some of these contracts are some of the most expensive contracts that we negotiate as commissioners, and these are taxpayer dollars. And everything else that we do is open and transparent to the public. And for me, as Dan alluded to, the question I had was, give me a reason why these shouldn't be conducted in the open. I think our taxpayers demand that and should have access to that. So for us, it's about transparency. At least for me, it's not about the union. It's not about the Freedom Foundation. This is about transparency.
As a constituent, I'm sure that there are those out there that would question, the reasons for keeping these private going forward. So
I don't know how the base here in Douglas County.
I didn't see much in the way of constituent feedback at your public hearing.
No.
Right.
We haven't done any polls or surveys. We're not, going to either. But it was put on the ballot over in Spokane to become part of their city charter. And I believe it was over 70% of the general public voted, yes, we want transparent. And even if that means open negotiations, we want the transparency aspect of that added to our city charter. So I would say that that's probably a consensus that's going to hold true when you're talking about tax dollars and people's hard-earned money being spent. They want to know where it goes, and they feel, and they are entitled to it. One other thing that, we got asked up there by a union member who is a shop steward or, their bargaining representative from the county, was our salaries and everything open to the public, and when we negotiate our salaries, we set our own salaries. And we said, absolutely. Yeah, you might not have known that, but yeah, we have to do that in open public session. We don't get to go behind closed doors and determine how much we're going to make in a given election cycle, or how much the other exempt excludeds and elected employees are done. Now, they asked, do we advertise for that? No, but everything is done in the open public session. And I did say, I wouldn't even consider it a concession. I wouldn't have a problem if that's something that concerns you. We could put an advertisement out there and let you know, hey, we're talking about exempt excludeds and elected official salaries today in our open public session. But
Well-
ours, it's all transparent now.
What about the argument that, hey, that's why we elected you, you're our representatives? No taxation without representation, as they say, but you're the ones that we have hired to do these negotiations in private.
Well, which brings us back to the beginning of, please give us a specific reason
Right.
why this shouldn't happen or why it doesn't work. And I don't think that we were actually given a specific reason. We were giving a lot of this is how it's always been done. And, I appreciate tradition. However, I'm not certain that it's applicable in this case.
Okay.
The only thing that I heard was that you may be misquoted by the media, or they could take a snippet out and it creates an opportunity for something to be taken out of context. And I was like, I guess you might have to go into these negotiations and understand that there's people there, and I don't know what you would say that you wouldn't want to be picked up or repeated in a negotiation, but
If you're negotiating in good faith and you start from that as your premise, there's really nothing to hide. And I fail to understand where the sticking point is at. I can understand some of the concerns, I do, but I don't believe that they rise to the level that they should persuade or dissuade these being made public. I just don't believe they do.
And I think it's really important to take this message away, and that is that nothing that we do, whether we adopt it or not, changes collective bargaining. It still exists. It still happens just as it does right now. We want to encourage that. We value our employees. We want to make sure that all of our staff is paid competitively, fairly, with the correct benefits. That's how you keep employees. But I think it's really important to understand that doing it in the public doesn't change anything.
No. Well, we'll move to a different topic. It has to do with, partnerships. Chelan, Douglas, Grant, Okanogan County partner up on a lot of things, and the most recent, as I understand, has to do with mental health and possibly setting up or creating a regional diversion program. I guess Chelan County's Kevin Overbay, commissioners involved in a selection committee there right now. Your thoughts on that program going forward, and thoughts about a diversion facility here in Chelan or Douglas County?
And it's very preliminary.
It is.
And, when you look at the cost of, for our law enforcement, and really when you look at homelessness, these are all symptoms of mental illness, substance abuse. And our law enforcement, by and large, doesn't have an opportunity when these folks come into contact with law enforcement. We don't have a real great opportunity right now to get to correct the underlying situation. They get put into jail. That doesn't help them. That doesn't address the underlying problem. And so we
Or the
really-
emergency room at the hospital.
or the emergency room at the
Yeah.
hospital.
Huge
And they're-
expense to the
Huge
community.
expense. And so this is, the idea that we're looking at right now would begin to address the underlying issue and also hopefully save taxpayer dollars. So that's the interest that we have in it and moving forward.
Good. Can you see or envision something like that established in Douglas County?
Or somewhere in the region, certainly.
Yeah, being regional, I think within reason that location is less important than getting a program established and starting to take the pressure off of the officers in the jails and, as you say, the emergency room.
I thought that's what Parkside was supposed to be.
A little bit different. It's a little bit different treatment facility, a little more limited in scope.
Yeah, okay. Finally, I think I'd like to get an update from you on your problem road up there in the Bridgeport area, DeZellum Road.
I was just up there on Saturday and walked it. The roadbed is, I would best characterize it by saying it's probably slumped a good 6 to 8 feet below the other areas, and so it is certainly not passable by car. And we continue to try to make it passable by way of walking so that folks can park a car on either side and be able to get to and from Bridgeport that way. It is certainly of concern. We are looking at continuing to explore long-term solutions for the road itself. It's certainly an issue that as is concern for us, particularly the safety of the individuals up there, and we're definitely sensitive to the fact that this is, and for a lot of those folks, represents a huge shift in the way that they get to and from work and other services in that area.
There's nothing down slope that's threatened, is there?
No.
It's one very specific area
Yeah.
in that road that's geologically unstable and the roadbed is failing.
Okay, all right, so it's closed until further notice.
It is closed.
Okay,
Yeah, like Mark said, that we've been, not only looking towards permanent solutions, rerouting that section and kind of bypassing that section of roadway as a more permanent solution, but we've also put investments into other alternative routes, albeit not anywhere near as efficient, but they've been historically known to be problems throughout the winter with drifting, some flooding in the spring. So we've tried to been out there bolstering up that road and making it a better road surface to travel on year-round in the event that we have a complete catastrophic failure that makes that whole section impassable by foot or otherwise before we get a permanent solution put together.
very good. Well, gentlemen, we're about out of time. Anything but the good of the order that you'd like to share before we let you go?
We're good.
You're good?
Ready for spring.
Yeah, me too.
I second that. I like the warm, sunny weather.
I got you. Well, thank you very much. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Hare. Thanks for joining us here on In Focus on NCW Life.